Welcome to a Saturday morning episode of $1,000 Car Guy. My name's Andrew, and in an effort to be more personable, I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit more of my home life, so you can feel like you're part of our family, or I'm part of your family. We're gonna merge families. That came out weird. Anyway, I'm going to show you what I typically make on the weekends for our breakfast, knowing that I keep everything on the cheap as much as possible because I need money for car parts, and since we are a one-income house with 4 people living in there, I need to keep everything as low cost as possible. So that includes making large pitchers of drink mix every week so that we can spend about $5 over 3 weeks for drinks. Buying bacon in a 3-pound bulk. Since the bacon takes the longest to cook, I normally do it first. 400 degrees for 18 minutes and it'll all be done. Couple of waffles for Rory. The future. Next, to dice up 1 whole potato. A little bit of oil, drop them potatoes in. Don't get burned. I personally use 4 seasonings every time I make potatoes: black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and garlic salt. And yes, I do use these every single time. Next up, because Megan and I are both having omelets today, we mix up 2 eggs in a bowl with a dash of milk. The eggs will be the last thing we cook because they cook the fastest. And that is a typical breakfast of $1,000 Car Guy. Oh look, cookies for dessert. So I'm trying to debate what to do today, since I'm having company over in about 2 hours. Still need to shower, and I really want to clean up today. I want to put most of this stuff kind of back in the car since nothing's getting sold at the moment, and it takes up a lot more space outside the car than it does inside the car. So yeah, I need to do stuff. I think since it would take more time to take the battery out, put it in the car, and then start to do my diagnostic process, today's values would be better spent cleaning up the area, which will leave more time to do things tomorrow. And maybe I'll just combine the episodes, that way you guys get a lot of car stuff in one episode, and not so much me cooking breakfast. Here's all the wiring from the last 2 weeks. And carpet. I think much sooner than later I'm going to swap these rims and tires onto that Mustang because, one, they hold air a lot better than those do, as you can probably tell from this extreme close-up zoom. Also, for whatever reason, people like these pony rims better. I've seen them online for like 300 bucks with tires and stuff, so I'll probably just list the rims up there for 100, 150 bucks and see if they go soon. That's all I got time for today, but check in tomorrow because we got something special planned for then. Alright, see you there. See, wasn't that easy? It's already the next day. So today is a big day because it is the last day of wiring. After today, I will not be messing with any additional wires. We're going to knock it all out today. Essentially, the important day is going to be next Saturday, because next Saturday the engine hoist comes. Well, technically I got to go pick it up. We'll probably film that anyway. But so all this week I'm going to be removing everything else that's in the way of pulling the engine. So I'm going to get the drive shaft out, things like that. Make sure that it is ready to go when Saturday comes because I don't want to be messing around. I'm probably going to need help anyway, and I don't want to waste their time any more than my own. So today we're going to finish up this side of the wiring harness, all these extra little pieces. Basically, there's not a whole lot left that I can cut out of the harness. There's a few pieces here and there, but this is basically how much I need. I'm probably going to do some diagnostics on the smog pump removal stuff, because I'm not going to be running it in the Miata. So yeah, let's get started. Obviously, the first thing I need to do is go get the Miata battery, stick it in here, and make sure that we have a good start for today. A bit of a hard start for the old girl, but we haven't started it in almost a week. Now that we know our idle is fine, we can move on to the wiring harness. Here are all the smog pump connectors. I'm going to remove them all at once, and then try starting the car to see if it still runs. Looks like we don't need them just to make the car run. But we kind of figured that, didn't we? So underneath those connectors are all these vacuum lines, which run down here and then over into the engine bay. As you can see, that main harness clip is now down here. So if you kind of pull these back, you can pry off all of those leads. But that leaves us with 3 open vacuum ports. Now, we can see that some of them have already actually been tied off or blocked with a screw. And essentially that's kind of what I'm going to do again. What I really want to know right now is, will it still start and idle correctly with these unplugged in general? Because if so, I'm fine with that for today. I'll just mark whatever this is going to the smog pump and then continue with the day. It seems to idle no differently than before, so that's great. I'm going to tape it, mark it, and then continue. Also means that we get to remove this, which removes, I don't know, 40% of the stuff that was running into this section of the harness. I titled this one Smog Vac. It's short for smog vacuum. Get it? So I realize now there's some large connectors over here that I've never actually unplugged and or tested. I mean, this one has a ton of wires going to it. This one has a fair amount of wires going to it. So let's unclip them and see if they're doing anything to stop us. That one is. This other large connector is held together with a 10mm bolt. Big connector. Probably does something important, I would assume. You think it does anything? Anything important? Yes, it does. It does something important. Car doesn't start without it plugged in. Which is a shame, because there's a lot of wires going to it. Back in business. Next up is this large gray block that says Motorcraft on it. I already diagnosed that it needs to continue to stay plugged in, so we are just going to remove it. It's held in by 2 5/16 bolts. Okay, so now we got those. We'll probably save these bolts so we can reuse them on the inner fender of the Miata. Next up is all these connectors down here, which are still held in by those Ford master clips, I call them. I don't know what the clips are actually called, but they hurt when I pull them out. Okay, good. And the idea here is that we are going to trace a lot of these wires that we cut off back through the harness and see where they go, because there's going to be some on the other side of the fender that I need to remove as well. In order to make my life easier, I'm going to remove these clips. Oh boy, I'm glad they made this easy. Oh man, that was fun. So anyway, now that that's unplugged, we should be able to pull this and this connector, hopefully, maybe? Maybe not. But maybe? Oh, I was taking all my tape off. I did that the hard way. Now I need more tape. Oh well. So now we got the harness up and above, so it should make it a lot easier for me to work on. Tape is good as new. So we're going to start with the simple side first, strip off all of this extra coating and tape, and then see where our extra wires are going and terminate them at the clip. So we're only saving ourselves 3 wires here, but so be it. 3 3 less wires to worry about later on down the line. Right? 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 I also went and clipped off the ABS line that was on the passenger side of the car. Obviously you don't need brakes to go fast. Also trimmed off those 3 smog pump connectors. Next up is what you would call the main course. Starting with the ECU, running down the line to a bunch of extra connectors that I've already clipped off, the smog pump stuff, ABS, things like that. But it is quite the wiring harness to actually look at in person. So we're going to strip off all the tape, see where the wires go, clip them off the terminals. That's it. Well, better it fell on my toe, I guess. So at this point, everything I've already pulled apart is basically terminated. So unless I want to be really stingent on myself, there's no reason to cut this harness apart any further than it already is. We may do so when it comes time to put it in the Miata, but for right now, it's just a lot cleaner to keep it all the way it is. So I'm actually going to retape this connector that I just took off. And then we'll move further up the line to see where some of these wires go. We just traced a bunch of wires coming from the ends of the connectors up to the main harness, and now I have some that are kind of hanging off in the distance here that I should be able to remove as well. Also, we see things like this where there's 3 wires going into this connector, but on the other end there's actually 6 wires coming out. So theoretically I could trace them all the way back through, see where they go, and then lop them off there, which we will probably do. Seems like the majority of these wires are actually running into that connector that I unplugged before. So we already know that everything we need to run the car is already connected, but any of these terminated lines can be removed. I mean, it's that same mantra this entire build so far, right? If it's unplugged and the car runs, we don't need it. Now we're at the point where these connectors that I trimmed off early on, all these extra strands, well, we only need 2 wires coming out of it to make the car run. So I should be able to strip all the others on this side as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Guess we gotta start the car now. Well, that was a good sign. That means we can clip off these. We don't need them. Woohoo! That took way longer than I expected it to. So my last thing to do today is bag and tag every single connector that I have left and basically remove them from the car if they're not needed. There's still a few things that run behind the engine. I'm sure I will get to them when I remove the engine next weekend. Until then, though, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. Well, you will see in just a minute after I tag everything. Well, that took a lot longer than I thought, probably 40 minutes additional to do everything I just said I would do. So here we are, a basically almost wireless engine bay. The stuff that I still have hooked up is the kind of like the MSD control stuff, blah blah blah, big neutrals, big ground, big power wire, stuff that went to the fuse block, and some other connectors that run behind the engine, which we will get to when I pull the engine. If you're curious to see how much wires I just pulled out, well, that would be all this. So you start with your main brain ECU, goes into a few connectors, a main ground, down into that power control box or whatever it was, into that box that was underneath the fan. My son seems very upset right now. I think he's very hungry. Say hi, Garrett. Anyway, over to the ignition module, the interior fuse block, which also handles the ignition fuse. A couple extra wires. That one is for the fuel pump, which runs all the way down here. It's that connector, which is the one that ties to the fuel pump itself in the trunk. A few other connectors, blah blah blah. Main engine fuel, blah. Main engine fuse block. Main connector that runs everything across the front of the engine bay. So that's basically it. A couple other connectors. So that's basically it. It has been one heck of a morning, but that basically wraps everything up for today. We worked up a good one today. Thank you so much for watching this episode. This was a big step. I mean, this is probably 1/8 or 1/4 of the project already done. The next part should go pretty quickly once I get all the mount stuff delivered to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Bam!